And good evening. You're on Kenya's independent and authoritative news channel, KTN. I am Ann Kiguta with a team getting bigger and stronger. Tonight we welcome James Smart to the team. Karibu sana.
Thank you very much, Ann Kiguta. Happy to be with the authoritative news channel, that's KTN.
Also coming up tonight,
truck drivers on a go-slow over Kenya's axle weight implementation.
Harambee Stars camp in crisis amid reports of coach Henry Michel going on a go-slow over an unpaid salary. Good evening and welcome. The Supreme Court has delivered an earth-shaking advisory opinion declaring that the one-third gender principle for elective positions will not apply in the March 2013 parliamentary elections.
While the majority decision might lift a huge load off the backs of members of the current parliament and the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, the Federation of Kenyan Lawyers, FIDA, immediately declared they will petition the President and Parliament to ensure that the one-third gender rule becomes effective immediately. KTN's Noah Otieno has that report.
The much-awaited opinion of the Supreme Court on the one-third gender rule for elective and appointive public positions finally came, a majority decision supported by 4 out of 5 Supreme Court judges.
Soft gender quotas, as represented in Article 81B, with regard to the National Assembly and the Senate, are for progressive realization. It follows that it cannot be enforced immediately. If the measures contemplated to ensure its crystallization into an enforceable right are not taken before the elections of the 4th of March 2013.
This comes after Parliament had practically given up on trying to resolve the gender rule dilemma after failing to agree on how to ensure that at least 115 of the MPs in the next National Assembly are women. The opinion of the Supreme Court had been sought by the Attorney General, Professor Githu Muigai.
Legislative measures for giving effect to the one-third to two-thirds gender principle under Article 81B of the Constitution and in relation to the National Assembly and the Senate should be taken by the 27th of August 2015.
This was the opinion of the majority, but the Chief Justice did not agree with his fellow judges.
It's my opinion, therefore, that the answer to the Attorney General's first question is that the two-thirds gender principle be implemented during the general election scheduled for March 4th, 2013.
The Supreme Court is not bound by its own decision. So in other words, tomorrow I or anybody else can go back to the Supreme Court and tell them, we think you are wrong, please look at this again.
Whereas the majority decision by the Supreme Court judges here might carry the day, the dissenting opinion by the Chief Justice might serve as some kind of pressure on the members of Parliament to pass the necessary legislation to ensure that the one-third gender threshold is achieved even for the 4th March 2013 general election.
We're going to ensure that we continue lobbying Parliament to pass the Constitution Amendment Bill 2011 that gives a clear mechanism for us to actualize Article 81B. We're going to petition the President and the Prime Minister to publicly declare that they are in support of Article 81B and Article 27 within the Constitution, and that their parties, all the coalitions, are going to put steps forward to ensure that we actualize Article 81B.
The Supreme Court has also advised that in case the first round of the presidential election next year results in a court petition, such a petition will have to be decided by the Supreme Court first before Kenyans go to a presidential runoff. Noah Otieno, KTN Prime.
Elisha Ongoya is an advocate of the High Court, and he was in that courtroom as that verdict was delivered. What do you make of it? I know this is not what your clients were hoping for. How big a blow, if at all it is, to the gender equality movement is it, in your opinion?
It's a major blow to the gender equality movement. It presents this institutional structure of this country as, to a certain extent, as being fraudulent to the gender equality movement, because part of the campaigns for this constitution, particularly the way it was marketed to the female gender in this country, was that their struggle for many years has finally been put to paid by virtue of the provisions of Article 27, Sub-Article 8, and Article 81B of the Constitution, which were the subject matter of this advisory opinion. Now, to tell them that they must suspend that dream much further is to a large extent not very favorable, is to a large extent sends a message that they were defrauded in the manner in which the document was marketed to that movement in the run-up to the referendum of August 2010.
And that in itself is a political question. We'll come back to it in a short while. But this was an advisory ruling, and it's perhaps one of the first times I think we've seen such a ruling in the country. Could you explain to us the difference between such a ruling? How binding is it, as opposed to if you had gone full out to court?
Yes, the nature of an advisory opinion is that a somewhat abstract question is presented to court, and the court is called upon to give an opinion on that question. It is not anchored on a contentious question in the way you see normal court cases where there is already a dispute that is taking parties to court. This is an abstract question that somebody goes to court probably anticipating a problem, and then the court is told to give its opinion in advance. Nonetheless, this same Supreme Court has held in another matter that was presented to court by the Interim Independent Electoral Commission, as it was then called, when it was seeking an advisory opinion on the elections date question, that its advisory opinions are decisions that are binding on all other courts except itself. So whereas an advisory opinion is simply that, an opinion presented in a non-contentious case, its effect from that earlier decision of this court is such that it's the same as a case presented in a contentious manner, where it is binding.
But one may very well then go back to that same court.
Yes, an advisory opinion, okay, any decision of the Supreme Court is not binding on the Supreme Court itself. That's what the Constitution says at Article 163, Sub-Article 7 of the Constitution. As a consequence, somebody can present the same question or a similar question to the same court and ask the court to depart from its earlier decision.
So interesting. We're out of time, but I must ask you, what do you make of the CJ's dissenting position on the matter?
The nature of a dissenting opinion or decision in any court case is such that it is not binding. It's a minority decision. It's just that he has had his say, but he's not going to have his way. Nonetheless, history teaches us that there are many dissenting judgments by many jurists across the globe that have subsequently come to hold sway. They have influenced decisions in subsequent decisions, and therefore, whereas at the moment is of no meaningful binding value to anybody, in future it could be used as a reference point by those who may want to have a departure from this majority decision of the Supreme Court.
Certainly appreciate you making time to join us on KTN Prime. We'll be staying with that story. Smart, over to you.
And interesting and complex questions as might have raised. But just how did you get here? So the Constitution promotes the participation of women and men at all levels of governance and makes provisions for proportional representation. It provides for women occupying at least a third of the seats in the county assemblies, as well as at least a third of the seats in the Senate. Well, the Constitution also provides for the enactment of legislation to compel political parties to be democratic and have women in their decision-making organs. Also, Articles 81B of the Constitution provides that not more than 2/3 of the members of elective public bodies shall be of the same gender. Now, what the Constitution does not provide for is the methodology to be used to ensure implementation of Article 81B. Well, it was not clear how the gender principle will be achieved, whether it should be achieved progressively or instantly. And that's the tough question. So the government's chief legal advisor, Attorney General Githu Muigai, in his submission to the Supreme Court, said there was a lacuna in the law, and being the final determinant, he sought the opinion of the Supreme Court as the matters were complex. Well, the Commission on the Implementation of the Constitution and CIC advisory on the matter observed, and I quote, "Unfortunately, none of the state organs charged with the responsibility of implementing the Constitution has a practical solution to this difficulty." Initially, the Cabinet had considered the possibility that all 80 additional seats be created by the Constitution could be allocated to women according to party lists, with the largest party getting the most seats. According to the proposal, Kenyans would still elect men and women of their choice in the 210 existing constituencies. Well, after the election, Parliament would look at which House, Parliament or Senate, had not met the 2/3 rule, and the House would then use the nomination list to ensure the gender rule was met.
Thanks, Smart. Joining me now is Winnie Lichuma. She's the chair of the Gender and Equality Commission. Are we moving forward or backwards in this fight to realize equality?
Thank you. In my view, the ruling today was disappointing. It's quite disappointing, and as a country, I think we have made many strides ahead. And for Kenyans to have voted in the new constitution, including the gender equality, or rather the equality principle, that is a major principle within the constitution, was a plus. And clearly, as we began to implement the constitution, it was very important that we read the articles to understand them. When you look at Article 177(1)(b), for example, representation at the county assembly, perfect, very clear, that in case we do not realize the 2/3 gender principle, it is in black and white, that we will get the numbers through political party lists, giving us the 1/3 representation. Clearly meaning that at the county assembly, we will have the gender principle represented. And I liked the ruling today because the dissenting ruling by the Honorable Chief Justice then asked one question. If the same constitution does provide for women the 1/3 representation at the county assembly, why would it discriminate them at the Senate and at the National Assembly?
Yeah, do you think MPs, Parliament for some reason is getting off the hook? And in your opinion, what would that reason be?
It's getting off the hook, but for me, they are not yet out of the hook. My stand now is Parliament must go back to the Constitutional Amendment Bill.
Do you think there's goodwill for that, given the fact that we're expecting them to be on recess in what, another maybe 6 or 7 days?
My dear, they have amended the Election Act in a day. The bill has gone through all the consensus building. We had the parliamentarians in Mombasa. It was agreed, but they have been deal-dalling every now and then. And for me, what I'm saying is this. It's so simple. The Kenyan women have gone through historical injustices. The Kenyan women voted in this constitution because of what it had in for them. And we are not going to allow Kenyan women to be shortchanged.
You know, they say that in Parliament, everything is possible as long as it suits the interests of parliamentarians.
Exactly.
So I'm wondering about how practical or how realistic this goodwill you imagine you will get from MPs is. And let me just add on to that. We've seen FIDA in that story by Notieno saying, you know what, we need the President and the Prime Minister to step up on this one and say that they are in support of a review of this, that Kenyan women should, you know, be able to be accorded that gender rule right now. How likely is it in this electioneering period? I mean, the President is going home, has nothing to lose.
Has everything to lose. Has everything to lose. Look at this. For me now, in fact, what the court did say was legislators cannot run away from their responsibility. And we know it's not the responsibility of the courts to write legislation. And in essence, what the courts were saying is, take back this matter where it belongs. And for me, where the matter belongs is in the House. I already have had a discussion with the Minister, Honorable Minister Wamalwa. And clearly my discussion with him after the court ruling was, we need to go back to the bill, that Parliament must make laws. Now for me, I support the FIDA stand. This is a political crisis that will require a political answer. And what is the political answer? I see lack of political goodwill from His Excellency the President. I see lack of goodwill from the Honorable Right Prime Minister. Honestly, they can whip their members in the House and get the numbers to give us the amendment. I have said time and again that the amendment we are seeking is not anything new. What we are asking them to do is just lift Article 177(1)(b) at the County Assembly and put it at the National Assembly in Article 97 and at the Senate in Article 98, and we'll be home and dry. We cannot discriminate with one hand and give the other women with the other hand. Kenyan women are equal, all Kenyans men and women are equal. Women have been discriminated for a long time. For example, now, we stand at 9.8%. We have never made 10% ever since time of independence.
You know what I hear you saying, Winnie,
Yes.
is this return to the goodwill question, that if they want to, they can whip their members of parliament. The question is whether or not they want to, and maybe it's one that you cannot answer.
No, we have a weapon. We have a weapon.
Yes.
The Kenyan women are watching. 4th March is coming. We shall decide on the leader who will want to promote gender equality.
And I must leave it on that note. Thank you so
Yes.
much. I certainly appreciate you coming to join us in studio. Winnie Lichumba from the Gender and Equality Commission. James Smart, back to you.
All right, complex state of affairs there, but to some worrying state of affairs, if you like, and it's only 1 week to the conclusion of the electronic voter registration exercise, the very first to be conducted in the country. The 1-month period set aside will conclude on the 18th of December. So far, only 8.6 million voters have registered to participate in the March 4th polls, representing only 46% of the total 18 million voters targeted. By counties, Lamu is so far leading with the highest percentage of registered voters at 72%, followed with Kiambu at 68% and Nairobi at 67%. Now, the bottom 3 counties are Wajir County with only 24.6% of expected voters registered, Turkana 19% registered, and the county with the least number of registered voters, wait for it so far, is Mandera at only 16.1%. Meanwhile, with the statistics this bad, IBC saying that it still expects to register the targeted number, contrary to reports that it had lowered its target to only 12 million voters. The chairman of the commission, however, says that voting will go on as scheduled, even with the minimum numbers registered. Now, Aaron Ocheng has that report for you.
It is an exercise that has had its fair share of problems. First, it was the delayed arrival of the biometric voter registration kits, and when they arrived in the country, the exercise is now being marred by a poor turnout. According to IEBC's latest statistics, the numbers of those registered is far below the expected figures, with just 7 days to go, which cast doubts on whether the targeted number of 18 million registered voters will be realized. IEBC's chairman Isaac Hassan, however, says the commission's target remains the same, as he expects more to turn up as the deadline approaches.
I think I was misquoted when I said that we are getting concerned that at the rate at which we are going, we may not be able to achieve our target, and that we may end up just getting 12 million. And I see in the following day in the paper, it says IBC has now revised their targets.
Hassan, who was speaking while unveiling a book to educate the voter on independent candidacy, says the March general election will go ahead, even without additional voters to the already 8.5 million who have registered so far.
Under Kenyan constitution and law, voting is not compulsory, and voter registration is not compulsory. I can't force Betty to go and register if she doesn't want. I can't force her to go and vote if she doesn't want.
Also raising concern over the low turnout at registration centers was Prime Minister Raila Odinga, who asked Kenyans to make use of the last remaining days and register, as the exercise will not be extended. Raila, however, discouraged those planning to travel to register in their rural areas, saying they should register to vote from where they reside.
It would not be right for a nation that is working that it should have a holiday for people to go and travel home to go and register. I don't think that is fair for this nation.
However, the members of parliament allied to the Jubilee coalition of Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto are saying that due to the delayed acquisition of the registration kits, keeping in mind that the previous exercise has been conducted in phases and for over 1 year, IEBC and President Kibaki should consider extending the deadline.
Sasa IEBC wanataka kuambia nchi na dunia nzima ya kwamba shida ni wa Kenya ambaye hawataki kujisajili. Shida ni nyinyi.
At the end of the day, you're not voting is a vote for a leader who you did not want.
Our kids are idle in a lot of parts of the country. Kenyans like to wait for the last day. We don't have the luxury of time. It will not be extended.
The MPs also say Kenyans in the diaspora should be facilitated to register and vote. Aaron Ocheng, KTN Prime.
On our segment, Quote My Vote, KTN is taking the conversation on the ongoing registration process to the voters on the ground.
KTN's Ashimwelu visited Kiambu, which is one of the leading regions in this process so far, to find out what the secret behind this country's high turnout for the registrations process.
The county of Kiambu, after 3 weeks of voter registration, has joined the leading counties in the number of voters registered so far. But this area, known for its vast farms, growing Kenya's leading cash crops, tea and coffee, also has another asset hidden beneath. Inside these narrow pathways that separate the different blocks of coffee farms, casual laborers in their hundreds have come out for the busiest season of the year. The coffee berries are ripe and the picking season is abound. But even this rush to make the most out of the harvesting season has not derailed the pickers from taking part in the voter registration process.
Wamekuwa wakitokeza kwa wingi kwa ajili wanataka mabadiliko.
Kwa sababu tukikaa hapa kwa shamba tukatae kuchukua, nchi yetu itaharibika na ni vibaya.
Even though a majority of the pickers we speak to on this farm have already registered as voters, we learned that the pickers are in the farms for more than 15 hours a day, leaving them little time to rush to the registration centers. So how has the IEBC been able to register 69% of the voting population in this county in just 3 weeks? The IEBC clerks, we are told, have been moving farm to farm with their BVR kits to reach as many voters as possible. And with less than a week left, others are still yet to enlist themselves for the 2013 election.
Hata ingawa sijachukua na sijaiona, lakini natarajia nitachukua.
The farmers here in Kiambu have a renewed confidence in Kenya's electoral process, and each one of them has their own expectation of the new government.
Unapigwa picha, ukienda kuvote, hiyo picha yako itaonekana. Kwa hivyo tunaona kama wakati huu hakutakuwa na mambo ya kusema kuko na kula zimeibiwa.
Wamama tunachukua kula kwa sababu tunataka kuchagua viongozi wazuri ili nchi yetu ikue mzuri.
Hakuna kitu napigia kura akusaidie, kwa sababu hata hakujui sio nawezi kusaidia dunia mzima.
While every region and every county has its unique challenges in the ongoing voter registration process, perhaps the approach taken by these coffee pickers could be of great lesson to some of the regions lagging behind in the numbers. Ashamwilu, KTN, Kiambu County.
Asha, thank you. 3 months after the deadline for the appointment of a police chief and 2 deputies, the country's top cops are still wanted. President Mwai Kibaki and Prime Minister Raila Odinga missed a 7-day deadline to name 2 deputy inspector generals and forward those names of the police chief to Parliament for approval. Meanwhile, in Parliament, MPs have passed an amendment to the finance bill, dropping their contentious 2 billion shilling send-off package. KTN's Tanina reports.
If the constitutional deadline was anything to go by, the country's new top cops should have been in office 3 months ago. But less than 3 months to an election, the positions of Inspector General of Police and 2 deputies remain vacant. 180 candidates had applied for the 3 posts. 27 were shortlisted by the National Police Service Commission. Only 9 made it to the list of nominees for the top jobs in the police force. The director of the Kenya National Focal Point on Small Arms, David Kimayo, was the commission's favorite for the post of Inspector General, followed by his deputy, John Ochieng, and Grace Kaindi, the commandant of the Kenya Airports Police Unit. For the post of Deputy Inspector General in charge of the regular police, CID Director Ndegwa Muhoro topped the list that also includes Jebet Ndeda of the Railway Police Unit and Jasper Ombati of the United Nations Mission in South Sudan. AP Commandant Samuel Arachi, Deputy CID Director Gideon Kimilu and David Ngodi were nominated for the post of Deputy Inspector General in charge of the Administration Police. The list of nominees was forwarded to the President and the Prime Minister on the 21st of last month. The 2 principals had 7 days to name the Deputy Inspector Generals and send the name of the nominee for the post of Police Chief to Parliament for approval. 3 weeks later, all has gone quiet. Parliament has just 5 working days left before MPs go on recess, and it is becoming increasingly likely that the country may go to the next general election without a change of guard in the police force.
The Director of Music, Kenya Police.
Critics say the process is being delayed by haggling over the constitutional gender requirement, ethnic balance, as well as jitters from powerful individuals who may want to retain the status quo ahead of the election. From the Chief Justice, the Director of Public Prosecutions to Supreme Court judges, all constitutional appointments to key offices have been made, save for the police chief, 2 deputies and the CID director, perhaps an indication of just how high the stakes are in the crucial and sensitive positions, more so as the country prepares for the March 2013 polls. Drita Tinina, KTN, Nairobi.
Well, that story by Rita Tina leads us to our big question tonight, and we ask you, do you think the government is committed to police reforms?
Please do send us your yes or no response with a brief comment to the SMS number. It's 8040, and we will be sampling your views during this newscast and give you the poll results at the end of this live bulletin.
All right, indeed. Now, it would appear that Rainbow Coalition party leader Charity Ngilu has been locked out of the Jubilee Coalition's primaries.
Well, following Ngilu's declaration that she was headed to the Jubilee Coalition, that league says that the deadline for pre-election pacts has lapsed.
Well, Ngilu had expressed the intention of taking part in the Jubilee Alliance's presidential nominations.
On Monday, NARC party leader Charity Ngilu put an end to speculation when she announced that she had joined the Jubilee coalition and would contest against Deputy Prime Ministers Uhuru Kenyatta and Musalia Mudavadi for the coalition's presidential ticket, ditching the Prime Minister's Coalition for Reform and Democracy.
Vyama vile sasa za kisiasa tumeziona. Ni ile moja mimi nilikuwa nikisaidia, na hii ingine sasa imejengwa na iko na vijana, mmoja ni Uhuru Kenyatta, mwingine William Ruto, mwingine ni Musalia Mudavadi, na nimesema mimi si mwoga ati niseme nifanye nomination kabla hatujaenda kupigana tuone ni nani atapewa nomination.
A day later, it would appear that at the time of the announcement, this was not a sealed deal. The Jubilee coalition now says Ngilu has not formally approached it.
We will talk about any other entrance when they have actually come to the table. Until they come to the table, it remains speculation.
Further, members of the Jubilee Alliance say it is too late to form a new pre-election coalition.
There were certain deadlines that we were supposed to meet if you wanted to be in coalition with any other party. We legalized that on the 4th of December through an addendum to the agreement that had been signed between URP and TNA.
The agreement signed by Eldoret North Member of Parliament William Ruto and Deputy Prime Ministers Uhuru Kenyatta and Musalia Mudavadi provided that Mudavadi and Uhuru would contest to be the flag bearer, while Ruto would be the running mate of whoever won the presidential ticket. The Jubilee Coalition's assertion that the time for pre-election pacts is past, now effectively barring Charity Ngilu from taking part in the alliance's presidential nominations. But the coalition says all is not lost, as the law allows for the formation of post-election pacts. Ngilu made an appearance at the signing of the court agreement, but later said the alliance was not genuine. Wilkis Anyabwa, KTN Prime.
As the country takes a collective break from the midweek work schedules to commemorate Jamhuri Day, some of the people that many will no doubt be thinking of are a group of Kenyans who made this holiday possible, the Mau Mau.
Well, the freedoms that many Kenyans enjoy were earned on the back of blood, anguish, and years fraught with danger. But what about the men and women of the Mau Mau themselves? Did they get what they fought for? Are their children better off because of their own armed struggle to liberate Kenya?
Well, KTN's John Allen Namu now reports in our final feature series in Kenya at 49.
mnaenda kiwanja mpira, lakini mnaingisha go, lakini ile kitu mtapewa hapana yenu, ni ya wengi.
The country is supposed to be, it should recognize what they did. They should be proud of that and recognize them while they're still alive.
On the wall of a small wooden house in Molo, the picture of an old man and his wife hangs. He is Absalom Wangoru, a devoted husband and father, and something more. He was one among thousands of young men from Murang'a who fought the British as part of the Mau Mau. He was born in 1924. John Njoroge, Absalom's age mate and friend, tells us how the two of them joined the Mau Mau.
Wanatufanya kama watu hawana akili, na sisi tuna nyinyi, tunataka mumalizike ama muwafike. Kwa hivyo sisi wakijana yote tukatoka manyumbani. Unatoka na nini? Na mkuki na kisho ya njora.
But neither of them would see the end of the emergency period as free men.
My father was a very wonderful man. He also fought for the Mau Mau, and well, he has gone through a lot because he had a foot, he had a leg that was short.
Tukatolewa Ruringu tukaletwa mahali tunaita Kamiti. Kufika Kamiti tukakuja tukaitwa watu ya Murang'a kando, watu ya Kiambu kando, watu ya Nyeri kando, watu ya Meru kando, watu wa Embu kando, Arabu marori yakakuja. Sisi watu wa Murang'a tukapokewa magari, tukapelekwa Murang'a. Mahali wewe huwezi kuingia kwa murango kama wewe unawekwa hapa bila kusema wewe ulikunywa kia. Ukikataa kusema ni lazima hapa ukuje ushukuliwe na vitanda. Kama wewe unapigwa hata hujui wewe iko wapi.
Jomo Kenyatta akawa waziri mkuu wa kwanza wa Kenya.
But then freedom did eventually come, and with it, Njoroge, Absalom, and many other Mau Mau fighters thought that hope was finally peering through the cloud of colonialism that was being lifted. But it wasn't to be.
Hakuna kitu hata moja sisi nimekushapata baada ya uhuru.
The promise of land for the landless all over Kenya would be betrayed. Absalom, Njoroge, and every other Mau Mau fighter hoping for this had to live out the rest of their lives malcontent.
This is where my father lies now. Yeah, he's resting here.
Absalom Wangoru died in the year 2010.
He gave me whatever I required, education.
Alice's view of her father's legacy is one that takes a lot of love to hold on to, because even she admits he didn't leave them much else.
Now you see this small piece of land where we're staying is what actually he got from whatever he was selling tobacco. That is what my father was doing. This small piece of land, he got it from the work that he was doing, struggling, even to keep us alive.
The land she now takes care of, her father bought using the money he made from selling tobacco. His friend Njoroge survives off of the money that his children, stonemasons living in Nyahururu, send him. But they do have hope that things will change.
Bila ikuje, kama hiyo kesi iko ndani ya radan, ikiwa na kitu. Halafu, ndio turudi tuambie serikali yetu ya Kenya, Waingereza wanalipa hiyo hasara, lakini mashamba iko Kenya, tunataka mashamba. Manake hata hiyo pesa ikija, ile mtu ya haki ya Mau Mau hawezi kukamata hiyo pesa bila shamba. Manake sisi throughout hakukuwa tukipigania pesa. Sisi mambo yetu ilikuwa uhuru na mashamba yetu.
Absalom's property is also home to the Molo Mau Mau Veterans Association, which Njoroge chairs. Today, the crowd of mostly women who during the emergency period would smuggle food into the forest to feed their husbands has gathered for a meeting before Jamhuri Day. They sing us songs that would carry them through those very tough days, remembering their sacrifice for Kenya and hoping that even today, the sons and daughters of Kenya's struggle will set their aging eyes on what they committed their youth to, land and freedom.
49 years of independence and the words Mau Mau are emblazoned in everyone, without exception. Illustrious names like Dedan Kimathi and General China are in the history books that are read today. But perhaps what isn't in the books that our children are reading is the status of the Mau Mau, their sons and their daughters right now. Their lives are no longer heroic or poetic, they're just hard. And as Kenya heads into its Jubilee year, perhaps it's time that changed. John Alanamu, KTN, Molo.
Moving on, the port of Mombasa risks grinding to a halt in the coming days following a go-slow by truck drivers. Now, the transporters, mainly ferrying goods to neighboring countries, are protesting Kenya's axle load, which they say is limiting their operations. Well, Philip Keitany with the details of the strike that has started choking the port of Mombasa.
This latest development is expected to hurt economies and businesses among the East African Community member states who depend on the port of Mombasa for their exports and imports. A spot check by KTN found more than 400 trucks parked by the roadside on the Nairobi-Mombasa highway from Mazeras to Mariakani for fear of being impounded at the Mariakani Way Bridge.
Ombi langu kwa serikali ni iachilie watu waendelee na kazi. Manake hii kazi zimesimama, unaona watu wanapata tabu.
Ruhusa ya serikali ni 48, si ndio? Na hapo ukiwa na 46 na axle imepita moja, unashikwa kwa tani moja.
According to the Kenya Transporters Association, it is difficult to comply with the rules as the transporters have no control over cargo packaging. The association now accuses the Kenya National Highways Authority for poor states of Kenyan roads, which they say is the major cause of shifting cargo.
What we are finding impractical to comply with is the axle limit of 8 tons per axle. This is because as the vehicle moves, the cargo tends to move along, on the bed of the vehicle or of the trailer.
Kenya allows for a maximum of 48 tons for vehicles, Rwanda and Burundi 53 tons, while Tanzania and Uganda allow 56 tons. This has created hurdles within the East African member states, even as they push for normalization of rules and policies to aid trade in the region. Philip Keitany, Prime Business Today.
Now, with just 14 days to Christmas, Norwegian-based hotel management firm Basecamp has opened shop in the vast Masai Mara by opening an eco-lodge at the Naboisha Conservancy. Well, according to Basecamp manager for operations Arnett Bullum, the lodge is built using environmentally sustainable green living practice. Eagle View is set on an escarpment on the remote Naboisha Valley. The camp has also embraced community impact-based tourism through a lease agreement that will see the native landowners receive monthly checks depending on the type of land they leased.
We do many more activities here. Because we're not in the park and governed by the park rules, we actually do walking safaris. We like to take you out of your car and get you the real feel of Africa. Out there walking, experience Africa, walk with our Maasai guides, the guardians of this land.
On to a developing story that we have been following for you. Consumer Federation of Kenya has justified its move to stop the planned digital migration by 2015. Now, in an interview with KTN Business Today, Secretary General of the consumer body, Stephen Mutoro, intimated that outside forces were trying to profit from the sale of DVB-T2 set-top boxes, thus the rush by the government. Well, Michael Karanja with the details.
The Consumer Federation of Kenya moved to court on Monday, filing a case under certificate of urgency to prevent the government from effecting the digital migration switch planned for the end of the month. The consumer body says the process to switch to the digital broadcasting platform is shrouded in conspiracy, stating that outside forces were manipulating the government to sell set-top boxes at exorbitant prices.
So there are critical issues here. It's not about a deadline. If somebody wants to exalt himself to look like he's the father of ICT in this country, that is good enough. We are happy what he has done so far. But on this one, I think PS Ndemo has made a mistake.
COFEC argues that the notice for consumers to acquire set-top boxes was too short, given other demands during the festive season, not to mention the much anticipated general elections next year. Kenya is determined to become the second country in Africa to be the 2015 international switch to the digital broadcasting platform after South Africa. COFEC believes there is no rush, and the government should instead get the systems right and avoid leaving Kenyans without TV viewing.
We are not necessarily saying that we must wait up to 2015, but we will. The only comfortable period we can be able to take is after elections, and we are looking at maybe a time like June. And even if they were to go ahead with a switch off, we do not think the Ministry of Information has the capacity and resources to undertake that kind of an exercise.
An estimated 1.5 million Nairobi residents risk losing their TV signal should the court fail to deliver a verdict and the Ministry of Information carries out its plans. Michael Karanja, KTN Business Today.
Let's now move on to agriculture. Sugar miller Mumias Sugar has set up a dairy farming project for its contracted cane farmers in the western region. Now, the project is in its first phase, which is expected to cost the listed miller some 2.4 million shillings as it seeks to increase the farmers' earnings. Well, according to Managing Director Peter Kebati, 9 farmers had already been identified as part of the project in Lurambi district. Kebati explained that they will be putting up dairy units for the farmers to be used as training centers for other farmers as the project grows. Mumias holds that there exists great potential for dairy farming within the cane zone as it can be easily integrated to cane farming to boost earnings of the farmers.
Nothing rewards like a Guinness. Guinness, reach for greatness.
Well, good evening and welcome to KTN Sports Today. My name is Sadiq Shaban. Now, if in the course of this broadcast you hear other sort of noises other than my voice, then stand by because I'll be telling you what's going on around me in the studio. Some sporting activity going on around this place, but that in a short while. Tonight, there's speculation about the future of Harambee Stars coach Henry Michel and his further roles in the team after the coach and his 2 assistants reportedly went on a go-slow this afternoon demanding salary arrears amounting to millions of shillings. And unconfirmed reports this evening indicate that the coach Henry Michel has given Football Kenya Federation a 3-day ultimatum to pay salary arrears or he will resign from the team. The coach skipped the training camp for this weekend's CHAN qualifier match against Burundi set for Sunday, forcing the Football Kenya Federation chairman Sam Nyamweya to issue a confirmation that assistant coach James Nandwa will once again lead Kenya to the first leg of the preliminary round qualifiers against Burundi in Bujumbura on Sunday. Nandwa, supported by his assistant coach Kennedy Odhiambo, conducted training session this afternoon.
I think Michel is going to come, and I'm here as assistant coach, and he's going to come. Even the federation knows about everything, but I know at the moment they are speaking with him, and he's going to join up with the team later.
Well, I must really wind up at this particular point because there are only 4 of us here in the studio. Everybody else is attending our annual staff party. But before I leave, there is Sunderland playing Reading tonight in the English Premier League, and Bradford will play James Smart's team, Arsenal, in the League Cup quarterfinals. I'm headed for the party.